Hi, I'm Manny Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer, and this is another episode in our series entitled The Team's Playbook. And in this episode, we want to talk about the various terms that we encounter when thinking about teams. We think about managing brokers, we think about supervisory delegated authority, and how those terms are important in the consideration of developing a team. So once again, I am joined by my friends Charlie Floberg and Jen Hawkins. Ladies, real quickly, who are you?
I am Charlie Floberg with Hawkins Poe. I am the branch manager, managing broker, and office manager.
And I'm Jen Hawkins, also with Hawkins Poe, and I currently am a team lead for 15 years now and also a branch manager.
And so in a prior episode, one of the things that we talked about is there is no statutory definition for teams, meaning that the structure of any given team can be whatever that team says their structure is. The question I almost always get when we're talking about teams in an educational setting is, doesn't a team have to have a managing broker for its team leader? Does it?
No.
Do you have any teams in your firm that don't have a managing broker?
We do. We actually have several teams in the firm that happen to be married couples. We have two married couples. There is no need for a managing broker's license with a married couple. And then we also have several brokers who act as essentially co-listing brokers. They choose to take on a listing together where they're both co-listing brokers of that property, but neither one has delegated authority over the other, and so therefore there's not a managing broker in that.
Okay, there's a few things that you just said that we need to talk about. I always thought it was funny, the Department of Licensing said that a team that consists of two people married to each other doesn't require a managing broker because the Department of Licensing said they're not about to jump into the middle of that marriage and decide who's in charge,
Smart,
right?
Smart.
Right? And so then you mentioned also that you have some brokers who work together as co-listing brokers, or maybe even would work similarly together to represent a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
But what I hear you saying there is that they're really more just a group of brokers who kind of have each other's back, more or less, right?
Right.
Nobody's telling the other one what to do. They're just trying to work together to preserve their own time schedules, meet the needs of their clients.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then you also mentioned a managing broker, and you tossed in the term delegation agreement.
Right. Then we also have those teams like Jen's, where she is actually in charge of those brokers on her team. And so she has a delegation agreement and a managing broker's license, which is required at that point.
So really quickly, what is a delegation agreement?
Yeah, so a delegation agreement is something that's a written out agreement that establishes that the designated broker has the authority over all of those brokers, but essentially they are delegating their authority to another managing broker who can then manage those group of people. And it specifically lists out those tasks of which that broker is being delegated.
Perfect. And it's signed by the designated broker?
Yes.
And by?
Yes.
Right? So it is more or less a contract between the firm and the managing broker, and the firm is saying, as the firm is in charge of, the designated broker is in charge of all of these supervisory tasks over brokers, but we're delegating the responsibility for those supervisory tasks to the managing broker. And I just think it's really important to throw in here another thing that the Department of Licensing likes to say is that you can delegate authority, you cannot delegate responsibility.
Right.
So even though you've delegated authority to a managing broker, and now the managing broker can discharge that authority to the brokers that she manages, the ultimate responsibility still resides with the designated broker, which goes back to what we talked about in a prior episode, why the designated broker, in your opinion, has to be so hands-on with the selection of brokers and the management of those teams, right?
Right.
And the reviewing of the contract for that team,
So Jen, you do have delegated supervisory authority over the brokers on your team.
Correct.
What does that enable you to do that you couldn't do without that?
Well, I will go back when I first started this venture, I did not have that delegation. I had a broker that we worked side by side. We just co-listed everything to, again, give me some free time back in my life. And I quickly learned that because at that point I had already established 10 years of experience. And so that person was asking me questions. It was almost like a mentorship role. So that was when Charlie and I talked, and we decided that that was time for me to then get my managing broker's license so that I could act as responsibly answering those questions for said broker. So now what changed is we've gone from just him helping me helping him, to established team meetings on set days of the week. And I run those meetings, and there's expectations for the team. And so I was able to level it up and have expectations that were for my said team.
So Charlie, I know that because you are still ultimately responsible for the management of these brokers, that means you have to do certain record keeping and other responsibilities. How does Jen having a delegated supervisory authority, how does that change your relationship as it would look like with the brokers who are not on a team versus the brokers who are on Jen's team? What's the difference to you?
Well, in terms of record keeping, it's the same. We still have the responsibility as the firm to maintain all of the same records. However, it changes essentially the day-to-day. So rather than those brokers coming to the firm or the managing broker, asking the questions or turning to us for mentorship, they're looking to Jen to be that leader of their team, essentially. So it does change kind of the day-to-day.
And that was a change dynamic once she attained her managing broker's license. Right. And then once you put that delegation agreement in place.
Right. She can then assign them tasks, be in charge of their work, review their contracts and help them fill them out versus just co-listing together and having two independent brokers who essentially work together where neither is in charge of the other.
I think it helps too, and I know we're going to talk about this in another episode, but it helps with expectation of branding, right? So I had a certain expectation, and in order for me to require other brokers to fulfill that, that was where that managing broker position came in.
Very
handy.
good. And this is important to understand because there is a statutory requirement that before any broker, whether they call themselves a team lead or not, before a broker can actually supervise or exercise authority over another broker in the provision of real estate brokerage services, that broker has to have a managing broker's license, right? And so what you're saying is that it's really important from your perspective to know that if she's calling herself a team leader and wants to have that responsibility, then in order for her to truly fulfill that, you have to be able to delegate that authority to her, which you can't do until she has that managing broker's license.
Exactly.
So without the managing broker's license, Jen would not be able to supervise or exercise authority over the other brokers on her team in their provision of real estate brokerage services. That was what changed when you got your managing broker's license, right? If you have questions on this topic or any other, please ask a question by visiting warealtor.org and following the links to the Legal Hotline. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.